Welcome everyone to Bullish Project episode 24, back again with your weekly check-in. And this week, I want to talk about a few different things, but it's mostly short, mostly just a super summarized episode here. And the reason why is because I want to hit on this topic and stress it a little bit more than I would normally do. And I wanted to give it its own episode as far as this topic goes. Now, a lot of the stumbled over my words there. A lot of what I talk about on this podcast kind of repeats itself, but it has different segments that make it different, and eventually it comes full circle. And I feel like what I've talked about has come full circle for this specific episode today. The reason why I say that is because what I want to talk about today is finding your why. And what I mean by that is finding why you get up in the morning, why you do things, why you go to work, why everything, right? Because eventually, if your why is money, eventually you'll either attain all the money that you can have, and then there's no other attainment in that case. Like, once you have all the money that you can have, there's nothing else that you can go after. Whereas if you did it because you love something and your why is more of like, I do this because I love it, then it's going to be, oh, I love this every single day. And you're going to build off of that rather than building off money and then eventually hitting a brick wall when you can't chase any more money, any more monies. Well, if that's even a word. And not only that, but you get into this cycle of chasing the money and then there's no emotional attachment to it, right? You can get money anywhere. You can do any job, you can do anything for money, but you can only like, based on your DNA and your interests and all that, you can only like certain things, and certain things will make you happy. So part of the reason why I wanted to do this is because what I learned this week, and I'll kind of go out of order here because I do want to start doing things that I've learned and create that into a segment on the podcast. I've done a few different segments and I've kind of done similar things, but I really like this one because, especially this past week, I've learned a lot. And this particular topic kind of speaks to what I've learned this week. And that is when you get to a point where, where you're headed no longer has like a motivational factor for you, then you'll just stop chasing it, right? And I think a lot of people know that if you have ever watched a motivational video, if you've ever, gotten really hyped about something and then you either get that thing, like you buy that thing and then you use it a lot, like say video games, you buy an Xbox, you use it a lot, that honeymoon phase kind of goes away. And then you're left with the Xbox, which you might still love, but you don't ride the highs of the initial like super excited motivated state, right? And what I've learned this week is being able to stay on top of that and stay at the peak of being motivated. You have to add a few different layers into that, right? Money is always a good thing to have because you need it to live. It's not necessarily a good thing to chase. Now, I do chase money. I'm a sales guy. I like to, it's a motivating factor for me because I want to live a better life. It's not just about the money for me though. And I think the bigger thing is, especially when I'm in sales, I like to work with people and make an impact on them and meet people. And I meet people with different businesses. I meet people with different backgrounds and I learn about things. I learn about their kind of music. I learn about different things, right? And then I get this pool of knowledge that I can then relate to in terms of like, if I meet somebody else and then they come at me like, oh, have you heard of this? And oh yeah, this one customer one time told me that. And it's like this endless cycle of information that I can then distribute around to make conversations and make friends and stuff. That's what I enjoy. I like connecting with people and I like the the fact that sales has brought me that connection with people. However, I've kind of in a sense like hit a brick wall to some of my wants and needs, right? And I'm trying to, in my life, because there are ups and downs, I'm trying to be able to make it to where there's something else that I'm chasing other than just this one thing all the time, right? I'm trying to make it to where there's something else that I can look forward to and like a bigger reason, bigger than anything that I can ever dream of as to why I do things. And most people choose their family, right? Most people choose like their friends, their family, their wife, their husband who's in poor health and they want to be able to make enough money to take care of them, their mom who gave them everything for 18 years and then some. They want to make enough money to buy them a house and pay them back. Like a lot of people have those kind of whys in general, right? My whys are very similar to that in terms of like a grand scale. So it, and that's what keeps me going. Like when I get the ups and downs, I just think back to like what I'm grateful for and why I'm really doing this, right? Because sometimes there might be situations you get yourself into and you're just like, what's the point? Why am I even doing this? Like, what's the point? And eventually you get to a spot where it's like, okay, am I doing something productive for this particular goal or this particular person that I'm trying to help? And like, is this really true to why, like my why, right? Not anyone else's why, right? You got businesses all over the place that are in business for different reasons. Most are for profit, but it's not always about that. You could find a business owner who sells bikes and fixes bikes for a living because that's just what he or she loves to do. It doesn't even have to be because you want to make money. Everybody needs money to live. That is no doubt about it. Like, everybody needs money to live. So you can just go ahead and cross that off the list, right? You don't even have to worry about that being a criteria of doing something you love because everybody needs money. And when you do something you love, there's always a way to make money on it, whether it's social media or offering a service or whatever, right? If the main thing you like to do is making like baking stuff, you can literally bake and sell that, right? Or if you like to clean, you could literally offer residential commercial cleaning services. You could sign up for that. Like there's so many different ways to make money and it doesn't even matter what it is. In 2022, you could literally make money doing anything. So the biggest takeaway that I want you to take from this episode is why are you doing things? But not only that, where is it going to take you to get to that bigger goal and that why? Like what keeps you motivated? Because it has to be something bigger than yourself if you're gonna continue forward, right? You can always go to the gym because you want to look good. You can always go to work because you want money, but sometimes that stuff fades away, right? And you get into the peaks and valleys of life and you're in a valley and it's like, what's the point, right? You get down on yourself, you're missing that motivation. There has to be something greater than you, like a kid or a parent or something that keeps you moving. Well, I don't really want to do anything today because I don't feel good, but I do it anyway because somebody's relying on me. Somebody depends on me. And that's something I want you to think about this week is what are you doing to provide for that person or provide for yourself even, right? You should definitely take care of yourself in most situations first. But yes, there is a sense of like accomplishment, I would say, in terms of like taking care of other people and giving to other people. So just think about that, right? Like what are you doing on a daily basis? If you don't like your job, then you can literally in today's market go to any other job. And I've talked about this on the podcast before, but there is no worker shortage. I just want to talk about this real quick. There is no worker shortage. When COVID hit, there was all these businesses that were not allowed to stay open and or face a fine, right? You're technically allowed, but like consequences, right? Most people didn't want those legal and all the consequences that came with that. So most of them shut down because they were forced to. And then where did those people go? The people who were involved in those businesses that didn't have anywhere to go, where did they go, right? Because you still need money. We just talked about that. In the beginning part of this episode, you still need money to live, right? That's a constant for every single person. Whether it comes from you or somebody else, you need money. But where did they go? Well, most people took unemployment, at least initially. But I don't believe that there are people, especially nowadays, that's definitely not true because I've looked at the data, but I could probably pull it back up. The graph of unemployment from when everything was shut down, which was at its peak, 14, 15, some percent. It was very high at the time. And then I've seen it slowly go down and it's actually like pre-2019 levels when the market was just absolutely great. It's pre-COVID levels, the unemployment right now. Yet, what stays constant? What stays constant in this scenario? You can't seem to find anybody. Everybody's hiring. You can't find anybody. Yet unemployment is lower than what it was pre-COVID. And in my mind, there's only one possible answer for that, and that is people were finding different paths when COVID hit because they needed money. They could not rely on unemployment. It didn't pay as much as you thought it did, even with the payment bonus, even with the $600 bonus. It's all taxed, and a weekly check is still not more than what some people were making. It was more than what some people were making, but not more than what most were making. And I've seen it firsthand with some of my friends and stuff like that, like unemployment checks they were getting. And that's my point. Like, if you missed the COVID boat where you got fired and you could have just rode the wave and potentially got a work from home job and kind of, if you missed that, don't even worry about it because there's still jobs available. Everybody still seems to be hiring for now. I know the recession fears and stuff like that, but you know, you can always take into account job security when you're trying to do something you love, but there's always a way to make money doing something you love. And I think your why, when you're thinking about that, first of all, take a second to think about that. When we're talking about why you do things, what really motivates you? Why do you go to work? Is it because you don't have any skills and you're taking like a bottom tier job and you're settling? You know, maybe you need to work on some skills so that you can get to your bigger goal. Is it because you know it's close to home and you don't have a car? Is it because, like, list out all those reasons and really be self-aware as to what is going on in your life. And then eventually you get to a point where you're like, "Oh, okay, well then these are the areas I can work on. These are the areas I can fix, like my strengths and weaknesses." And then you start to figure out, like, why am I going through life doing this stuff? What is the reason? And you start to figure out, like, how everything works in terms of like what you do on a daily basis, and then when you wake up, like routines and vitamins and like all that stuff. Like, there's patterns with all of it, right? Because when you wake up, you know, you can take a vitamin to help yourself feel better mentally so that you can do more tasks. Like, there's always a stem for everything. And like, I'm rambling a little bit, but I'm just kind of rambling on what I've learned this week because I've kind of struggled with the mental side of things this week. And it led me to the question of what this episode is all about. Like, my why, like, what am I doing things for? Right? Some people can be money motivated. Some people can. And I feel like the people who are money motivated either never chase enough to fully retire or really get to that point, or you know, realize they can get money anywhere, so then they just stop chasing the money at that point, or they spend so much to where they always need it and that's why they chase money. I mean, there's a few different ways, but that's how I feel about it anyway, because you can always have money, especially if you make more and spend less, you know, or even you know, almost anybody can spend less money if they really tried and audited their finances. But once you take that aside and you don't have to worry about money anymore, then what's next, right? And I kind of relate this to, you know, video games in a sense, because when you're going through life and you have all the money in the world to buy anything you want, then it's like, okay, well, you know, what is next, right? You kind of like beat the game almost. And at that point you're relying on your interests and your whys to keep you going and to keep moving you forward, because you already have all the money. Like, you could literally go to the dealership tomorrow and buy your dream car, and then what, right? If you're chasing a car and you already have the car, then what's next? And you have to realize that looking forward to things will keep you not only busy, but it'll give you that sense of chasing towards a bigger goal and that accomplishment. It'll also, when you do get to that goal, it'll also give you that sense of like euphoric sense of accomplishment. Like, man, I really did that. I worked my ass off for that. But then you have to have something else to achieve. And that's why baby steps are so important too. When you look at the full goal, you could get discouraged if you're like at the bottom of a mountain and you're looking towards the top, like, how am I supposed to get up there? But the reality is, the only way to get up there is to take one step in front of the other and follow the path and climb up with whatever you need to climb up with, right? And those paths are not all the same. They always have different roadblocks for everybody, different detours and closed paths and all that. Like you have to go around. It happens. And there are things in life where, you will lose a job, you'll lose a lot of things. You'll get into a spot where it seems like nothing can go right. Yet when you wake up in the morning, the thing that stays consistent is your why, the very core of what you do every single day. So think about that this week. You know, I do these weekly check-ins, these episodes, and they can vary in length. This week, I think it's just a very basic topic and a very basic understanding of what I've learned this week. And yeah, I just wanted to mention it because I know that even as simple as it can be, we just all need that reminder sometimes. And I was thinking like, man, should I even do this episode? Should I even post it? And I'm thinking, oh, Sunday night, I really got to post something. But in my mind, I was like, this kind of feels right to talk about. It's not just me rambling on and getting an episode out there just to post it. I'm rambling a little bit, but I'm also talking about quality stuff. And in general, like when you think about what is the reason you keep going, it has to be something bigger than yourself. You have to be there for others. You have to, create a legacy of helping people. And when you do that, you for some reason get a sense of enjoyment out of that. I feel like that's most people. And it's definitely me for sure. Because when I help people, I'm like, man, that feels really good. When I know something that somebody else doesn't know and I get to like have a conversation and kind of like educate them on that a little bit, or something new came out and I get to show somebody, you know, something like it's really cool. That gives me a pretty cool sense of like, oh, when you go through that on your own first, when it's new to you, you're like, man, this is so cool. And then when you get to show it to somebody else, it's almost like your brain takes you back to the first time you did it or saw it or played it or whatever it is. And then you get that euphoric sense of like serotonin or whatever it is, like again, like it's the first time you ever played or you ever saw it or whatever it was, right? I relate to mostly video games. So when I say play, I'm talking about video games. When you play a game that's new and you get your friend in on it who's never played it and they go through and they're like, oh man, this is really cool. I love this. It feels good. It just does. But in general, when you show something to someone that's new, anything music wise, I'm a big music guy too. You show somebody a new song and they're like, oh my God, I really like this. Like this song is amazing. It's just weird how it works. And I don't think that, I don't think that we're all too different in a sense of like, we're all different, but I feel like we all have similar wants and needs as human beings. Like if we take it down to the very foundation of who we are. That's why I do this. That's why I post podcasts. That's why I keep with the weekly check-ins and the motivation. Like I give a new topic every single week and new topics on different episodes to talk about. Here soon, I hope to have some guests on the podcast again, and we'll get some of those rolling. Get some super productive conversations out there because me doing this podcast myself, I feel like it could be 10 times better if I just had somebody else doing it with me. In general, it takes away the monotone of my voice, and even though I kind of fluctuate with my tone of voice, it still gets somebody else into the podcast where there's a pause and then you can kind of flip your brain to listen to somebody else, and then you just get this cool conversation going back and forth. Plus there's more content that way, more perspectives, things like that. And why I do the podcast, it's mainly for me. Mainly. I'm selfish that way. I can be selfish in different parts of my life, but it's mainly for me. It's almost like therapy to do this podcast, like almost talking to myself, but for others and me speaking up because I know somebody else might need to hear what I'm saying, and I'm kind of talking to myself at the same time. So then I also need to hear what I'm saying, and it helps both of us at the same time. It's like a double win, the win-win. I love that. there's something about like the podcast world in general is just so cool, and it's allowed me to meet new people and actually rekindle some friendships and talk to different people. And again, I'm a human guy. I like to connect with people. I like to talk with people. It's just weird how it all works. But that's pretty much it for the episode today. Very short, but lots of good stuff. Little good reminder out there to just go out, find your why. Think about that. I'm stuck on this the last few days. Like, why am I doing things? Why do I go through life and do things? And it it's just so cool, some of the answers that you can think of when you really challenge yourself to think about it and to be self-aware. And once you figure that out, then you can attack it. Like, I'm doing this because I want to and I really love it. Cool. That's all you really need to know. And if you're doing it for money, cool. That's cool too. You just have to know who you are and play to yourself as, only you can play to, because you understand yourself more than anyone else. And that's all I'm asking. If you guys want to share some of your thoughts, definitely leave a comment. Definitely like this podcast, this episode here. Even if you didn't like it, I would appreciate it anyway. You can tell me you didn't like it in the comments. But YouTube likes to see the likes if you're on YouTube. I'd appreciate that. If you're on Spotify and you haven't followed this podcast yet, I would really appreciate that. I would really appreciate that, because to do this podcast week over week and to think of different things to post, and sometimes your episodes aren't as long as others and all that. I don't really care about that personally, but I will say it is a little challenging and I like the challenge. But if you appreciate the work I'm doing and the motivation I give every week, every Monday at noon, if you appreciate that, I would appreciate you to like and subscribe and all that jazz, right? To tell YouTube that you really like this and that you want to see more of it, you want to hear more of it. Because I'll evolve as a human and I'll get better, and eventually I might be, big money, motivational speaker type stuff. I might be up there. Who knows? We'll see where it goes. And these are my baby steps, right? My baby steps are episode 1, 2, 3, 4, 23, and now 24. I think, right? Yeah, this is episode 24. Those are my baby steps. So I leave you with this final thought. What are your baby steps? And what is your why? Those two questions I have for you. If you got a big goal in mind, then that's your why, kind of. Why do I get up every day? Oh, well, it's because I want to have this successful business. I want to be able to make enough money to give back to other people, whatever it is. And then you have to know your baby steps as well to get to that point. If you don't know your next step, you're not going to get to the top of that mountain. I guarantee you that. You're going to be stuck halfway up trying to, jump through some rocks that are a little sketchy, and then you might fall and die. Who knows? You got to know your next step. And if you don't, it's okay to pause for a little bit and think about it. But at the end of the day, you have to challenge yourself to get to that next step, and then eventually you'll get to the top. You just got to be consistent, and you just got to stick with it. Anyway, I'll leave you guys with those final thoughts. Really challenge yourself to think about that this week, and I'll be back next week with hopefully some more guests in the next few episodes, new topics. I already have a few ideas for those. And this was kind of a spontaneous topic, spontaneous episode. I'll kind of watch it back and listen and see how it turned out. But we're experimenting here on the podcast. So if you liked it, again, throw a like up there. I'd appreciate it. Until episode 20, well, this is 24. So until episode 25, I'll see you then next week, next Monday at noon for another one. And until then, take care of yourself. I'll see you later. Peace.